All right, hello. I'm going to do a quick sound check, make sure everybody can hear me. And we'll go from there. Make sure everybody can hear me coming in hot. Everything sounding all right? People can hear me? Sounds good. All right. We'll try to gain it up a little more. How's that? Sounds a little better? Should be pretty close to good. All right. So, today we're going to be talking about a few things, and we have a giveaway. So I'm going to start the giveaway clock here in the corner. Every 8 minutes, we're going to have a giveaway. So I got tons of different stuff today. I have guitar cables from Bestronics, from Evidence, from George L., from Canary. So we're going to have a couple of different cables we're going to be giving away, and these are just like bulk cables. You can make your own soldered cables out of these. I also have a Vertex boost that I'm going to be giving away as well. That's going to be the last giveaway item that we do. So every 7 minutes, I'll be doing a giveaway, so stay tuned for that. The other thing that you may have noticed is that yesterday we released our Vertex Boost MK2. So we'll do a quick unboxing of that so you can take a look. So this is the box that it will come in, and standard Vertex pedal box. It's unserialized because this is the very first prototype. And doing a nice unboxing, you get a nice little quick start guide, a little information and a couple of different wiring diagrams for the boost. You pull out the boost, you got your nice polyurethane bag, your poly bag, and then you have the boost itself. Now, one thing that's pretty cool that actually I didn't cover in the video is I actually have clicks for this. So I don't know if you can hear it through the mic. So I actually put 16 clicks for every single decibel of boost. So you can actually really dial it in and click it perfectly in place. So it's kind of an upgraded potentiometer that I got where you could get it to click for every single dB. So it's pretty cool. So it's easy to know exactly how many dB you're boosting. You can hear a click that's associated with each movement. But this is exactly the same as the original boost, but it's much smaller. So here's the original boost. I'll just pull it out so people can kind of see as a reference point. So here's Boost MK1. Here's Boost MK2. Functionally, they're almost identical. The only big difference is that if you look at the back, the middle jack on the MK1 is a 1/4 inch, whereas the middle jack on the MK2 is an 1/8 inch. And they're both stereo jacks. They function the same way if you want to use an expression pedal or a volume pedal into either of them. The only other difference is that the MK2 has a buffered return. So that expression jack is essentially an insert point. And now it not only has a buffered send, but a buffered return. So it really allows you to be able to put anything in there and have that impedance firewall so that you can get it to sound exactly the same on the input and output of the system no matter what's there. And so that makes it a lot more versatile. We can use this guy as a dual buffer, so you can actually use that send and return jack to put in all of your devices in your pedal chain and use this as an input and output buffer. You can use this, of course, with a volume pedal, an expression pedal. You can use it as a gain booster if you want to add more distortion before your overdrives. You can use it as a master volume if you put it after your overdrives. This can even turn a passive effects loop into an active loop. And we have wiring diagrams for all this different stuff, so it's more than just a one-knob boost, is what I'm saying. It's the same one that all the guys have used, all the session guys helped me develop all those years ago. So we really had 8 years to really create a V2 that improved upon what we were already doing, making it smaller, very pedalboard friendly. So definitely check this out, and it's exclusively available at Sweetwater. So Sweetwater will have it for the first 30 days, and then I think all of our other dealerships will have it, unless it's an international dealership. So international dealers will have it momentarily, but if you head over Sweetwater's website, you can check it out. They have it available for pre-order right there, and I would say go there immediately and get it. As I understand from this afternoon that they only have a few left. They just put in another big order with us this morning because they're almost out. So if you do want to make sure that you get one of the first batches of them, you definitely want to go to Sweetwater, type in Vertex Boost MK2, make sure you get it before they're gone. So we have a lot of cool stuff going on too that I wanted to just mention real quick before we have 3 minutes till our first giveaway. Countdown's in the corner. One other thing I wanted to mention is that we have a Dream Pedalboard giveaway. And if you go to our website, I'll bring it up so that you can see exactly what it is that I'm talking about. If you go to our website and you go to our Dream Pedalboard giveaway, I'm going to bring this up. Dream Pedalboard giveaway. Check this out. We're going to be giving away a pedalboard of your dreams. So essentially, you're going to sign up. We have an option right here where you can sign up for a couple of different things. And if you're the person that wins, we'll actually build your pedalboard from scratch with all the stuff that you have. You provide your pedals. We're going to make it on one of our pedalboard platforms with a custom interface from Goodwood. We're going to have all the cables and all the connectors provided by Bestronix. And we're going to have a power supply provided from True Tone, and then we're going to put it all together for you in exactly the way you want. It's very simple. You just put in your name, you put in your email address. I guess I already signed up. We'll try a different email address, info@Vertex Effects. And then you can start subscribing. And each thing that you do, each thing you subscribe to, earns you a point. So you can actually get up to 14 entry points. So if I subscribe here, I just click OK, I'm done. I subscribe to our podcasts. Each thing that I do, if I want to subscribe to Goodwood Audios, it'll take me over to their page so that I can subscribe there. You want to make sure that you do as many of these things as possible so that you're able to earn as many points, up to 14 points total, 14 total entries, and that gives you 14 opportunities to win. So this is a really cool thing. You should definitely do it if you're interested. Basically, the point structure is just, you do as much as you can, whether that's subscribing on Instagram, Facebook, YouTube, those places. This will give you all the opportunities to be able to win this thing, and I will build it custom for you exactly how you want it. I will pay for all the shipping. It's available worldwide, so no matter where you live, we were going to pay to get the pedals to us and get the pedal board completed back to you. So pretty cool opportunity, some really cool collaborators, some of the best people in the business. So I think that this is a fantastic opportunity if you're kind of considering doing this. So definitely well worth it. Make sure that you get involved and that you subscribe to that if you haven't already. So I think we have time for a few questions before we get into this. I know I said people bring their pedalboard questions. We already gathered a bunch of them from Instagram and from Facebook and from YouTube here because I posted in the community section. So let's take one, and then we'll go into our first giveaway. So one thing that was asked, I'll blow this up a little bigger, is I have an MS3 with a bunch of analog pedals going through a Marshall DSL 40CR and 4 cable method. But I find it's too many long cables to handle. Plus, I want to add a MIDI cable for 4-channel switching. It's just adding to the already spaghetti nightmare of cables between the pedal board and the amps. Well, I think that an easy situation here, or an easy solution, is just to make a snake. And I think the one thing, if you're using a low impedance environment, if you have nice quality buffers, you can definitely get away with thinner cables than you might ordinarily on the input side when you don't have any signal conditioning. It's just the passive pickups driving the line. So you might be able to get away with using something like a 2319 if you have a good quality buffer, maybe say somewhere between maybe 100 and 200 ohms on the output impedance that can drive that type of line, even though the cable might be 30, 35 picofarad per foot capacitance. You might be okay there. Otherwise, Bestronix actually makes some really, really nice snakes with low capacitance cables, and they do those all custom, and I've seen them make them. They're very beautiful. I would say talk to Brad Bartos at Bestronix, and I think he can hook you up. But we just completed our first section of the video, so I have to do a giveaway. I've organized some questions here, and essentially what we're going to do is I'm going to put the question on the screen. I'll dictate the question. I'll say what it is. And then the first person to comment with the correct answer is going to win this free item. So the first thing that we're going to be giving away is some Evidence monorail. I already have it packaged up so I can get it ready to ship to you. I have 30 feet of Evidence monorail cable. This is just bulk patch cable. You can use this to solder to your own ends. I'm going to ask a question. The first person to respond correctly to that question, Mejia is monitoring the chat, and he's going to announce the winner there so that you know exactly who it is. The winner is going to email Mejia, M-E-J-I-A, Mejia, at vertexeffects.com. If you don't win, don't email Mejia because that's just going to create confusion. So we're doing an honor system here. First question that we're going to ask, question number 1 is, what are the 3 pillars of the Holy Trinity of tone? This is a word that I often say in our videos. I talk about the 3 critical things that if a board has these 3 critical things going for it, that it's going to pretty much mitigate any bad things that would happen on a pedal board in terms of noise, in terms of tone suck. If you're doing these 3 critical things, and I call them the Holy Trinity of tone, if you can say what those 3 things are, the first person to answer that correctly is going to win 30 feet of evidence monorail cable, black. So go ahead and put that in the comments. I will also just mention that sometimes when you type in a comment, it will show up for you first, but in our actual feed, it doesn't show up first. So if you see visually that your comment supersedes somebody else, you go, I want it. Sometimes it doesn't always happen that way. So I always have Mejia take a screenshot of what actually comes through on our end. So if there is any dispute, that it's easy to kind of put that to rest. So it looks like Vince DeGoya is our winner today. Mejia just sent me a text. So Vince, congratulations. We'll look forward to an email from you. Mason Mejia, we call him Mejia because his name is Mason actually too. So we don't have any confusion with the 2 Masons. Make sure that you email Mejia. He's going to put his email address in the chat. And make sure you hit him up. Vince, congratulations. Nice work. We're going to start the clock again. We're going to have another giveaway in 8 minutes. So stay tuned because everybody's going to be a winner today. Lots of giveaways. So we were talking about our giveaway. We got into some questions. I want to get into another one of the questions. We did one of the I think we did an Instagram one. Let's do one from here. I got a cool one from Christian. What's up, Christian? It says, hi there. Can you upload a diagram for the buffer interface that allows, sorry, I'm moving this so I can see it a little better on our screen, that allows us to route an input buffer after the fuzz? Yeah, and I think that diagram exists. So basically what you would do is you would create an audition loop. So we have a diagram for an audition loop. And in essence, you'd be building the same thing as an audition loop, except you would be building it on the side of where the fuzz is, and then you would just put a buffer on the return, right? Because when it comes back out, so like it would go guitar in passively to the fuzz, right? And then fuzz would go back, so it would be like guitar in to send into buffer input, and then out into the return, and then the buffer would be there that would then feed the following device that was coming out of the interface. And so I think that it exists. It's just maybe not in the format that you recognize it in for this particular application, but the actual routing of how to do that is in there. And it's almost exactly the same way as there's a popular buffer out there right now called the Una buffer, and it's essentially doing that same thing, but it's putting the audition loop on a foot switch. But you can actually just do this without any sort of foot switch, and have a fuzz, first without any signal conditioning, and then the signal conditioning patches in. It's basically just creating a little patch point for the buffer. Very cool. Let's go back to somebody on the gram. Here's one from the gram. Thank you, Christian. One for the gram. Let's blow this up. It says, my wah is extra noisy when it's toe down. Any fixes or suggestions? Okay, so here's a cool thing about wahs. If you go into the inside of the wah, there's a rack and a pinion ordinarily on most of these wahs, unless it's like an optical one, like a Morley or something. And sometimes these pots that are used in them are not that great. And so when it gets to one extreme of the pot, it can sometimes oscillate. And so what you can do is you can actually just remove the rack and pinion from each other and just turn it maybe one tooth away from the furthest extreme. and you'll find that the noise actually goes away if that's the problem. Now, there can be other issues too. Sometimes people we got into this conversation the other week about linear power supplies, and sometimes and often when you put a vintage style wah with an inductor that doesn't have a mu metal can or any sort of shielding around it from the electromagnetic field, and you get that too close to a toroidal transformer or a C core or R core, the ones that people say are toroids but aren't, you can also get an issue like that with your wah, although I don't think it would just be in the toe down. It would sort of be all the time. It would be problematic. So it wouldn't be just exclusive to that one thing. But yes, they could be one of those two things. I think it's probably just needing to move the potentiometer just back one tooth, because they have these sort of just like graduated teeth between the rack and the pinion, and you can basically like put it, close the wah completely, where it would be in the most extreme position, right? Take off the bottom plate. You're going to undo there's kind of like a guard that holds the rack and pinion together, and you just unscrew that a few screws, you move it away, and then you can just move the pot one more notch away from the extreme and see if that noise goes away. And you might be able to get away with one or two, because on some of these wahs, they actually don't really do that much in the last maybe 10 or 15% of the travel. So you still get the full range. It'll just take away a little bit of that weirdness on the top. Yeah. All right. 3 more minutes until our next giveaway. So stay tuned. Let's go. We got Steven or Stefan. Steven or Stefan, tell me, I think I've asked you this before, so I'm sorry if you told me and I'm not remembering. But what's up, man? Uncle Mason, is there going to be a problem if I put a CS7 on top of a CS12? No, those are both. I guess the CS12 technically is a semi-switch mode or like a hybrid, because the AC side has a transformer, and there's a slider switch so you can slide between 120 and 220, but the rest of it is a switch mode supply. So, and then the CS7 is full switch mode. So you're not going to have any issue with the power supplies there. So no worries on that. Mark A, what are some of your options using guitar pedals for vocals? I have to be honest that I haven't done many guitar pedals for vocals. Usually it's been vocal effects like the TC, Helicon stuff, or like a talk box. But I haven't done a lot of stuff with using unbalanced effects on vocals. Like mostly it's stuff that it's like doublers or harmonizers for vocals. I wouldn't say I have a good answer for effects that I've really vetted that work well for that application. So I'm sorry, Mark A, but I bet probably maybe there is somebody who does a lot of vocal boards. I don't know. I don't know who that is, if there is that person. Let's see. Ator. What would be your choice to use pedals in a line rig context? Strymon, Iridium, or Walrus? Which one sounds better to you? I haven't used the Walrus one, so I can't say that it sounds better or worse. I think the Iridium is fine, but there's always a compromise, right? If you're somebody who's really played a vintage Vox AC30, a Marshall Plexi, and a good twin reverb, none of them are really that cool, compared to those things. They're just way more convenient than having a twin reverb, an AC30, and a Marshall Plexi on stage with you. So I understand they appreciate the convenience. But for me, man, it's so hard to go that route. I mean, I can understand for some people if they're using in-ears, and the differences between those things is kind of marginal at a certain point. But I just don't get down like that, man. So I will have to try the Walrus one, and then maybe we can do like a cooler shootout. It would be a cool video actually, because I have all those amps. I have a old AC30. I don't have a twin reverb, but I have a Pro reverb, so that's like a 50 watt kind of equivalent. And then I have a 70 Marshall back there. We could do a cool kind of shootout with the real amps versus the Iridium versus the Walrus, and see if there really is an appreciable difference. Good afternoon, Scott. 30 more seconds. We'll take one more question. Ryan O'Connor, I know you don't like solderless cables, but are the Evidence Audio SIS cables the best solderless cables? I would agree that they are the best if you're going to go solderless. those are the best if you're going to do it. And I think that they came up with a little bit better system. You know, it still has some drawbacks, certainly, but I think, again, if we're just being objective, who makes the best one? I think that is the best one. So we just expired another 8 minutes. It is giveaway time. This time we're going to give away some Bestronix low capacitance guitar cable in bulk, 30 feet. I have it all ready to ship to you. I'm going to ask the question, if you weren't here from it before, I'm going to ask the question. You're going to type into the chat what your answer is. The first person to answer this question correctly is going to win this. We are going to ship it to you no matter where you are. It doesn't matter if you're in Germany. It doesn't matter if you're in Scranton. Wherever you are, we're going to ship it to you. So the question is going to come up. You're going to type it in. The first person that answers it correctly, you're going to email Mejia. He's going to put his email address in the chat so you can get it to him. Here's the question. Get your typing fingers ready. Second question is, what is the best, or the optimal, I guess is a better way to say it, input and output impedance for a high-quality buffer? What do we know to be true? This is something we talk about all the time in our videos. What is the optimal, the ideal input and output impedance? Now, there's some ways to cheat this. I've seen guys run TLO72 IC chip buffers, like a Klon-style buffer, low like this, but ordinarily, with a few exceptions, this is kind of bogus stuff. You know, like if you're using a TLO72 as a buffer, it's not an ideal buffer chip. But generally, if it meets the spec, some sort of input impedance, some sort of output impedance, and it looks like we got a winner. Chris Moore is our winner. Mejia, yep, just as a Chris Moore is our winner. So Chris Moore, make sure that you send Mejia a message, and the answer to this was 1 meg input impedance, 100 ohm output impedance. That is kind of the standard litmus test that you really want to make sure that you're hitting, and you want to make sure that that's kind of, you know, plus or minus. I mean, usually with the input impedance, it's not plus or minus a few. It's like usually 500K, 1 meg, 2.2 meg. It goes up kind of in larger sequences like that. But 1 meg input, 100 ohm output impedance, that's really what you want to be looking for when you're thinking about good buffers. Now, before we go, I'm going to start the clock because we're going to do another giveaway in 8 minutes. Again, I got more cables here to give away. One thing that I wanted to mention, this is an important thing. If you are into cables and you've been watching our stuff and you're like, man, I really like the cables that you guys make and I want to have some of that stuff, or I really like the Velcro that you guys use, or I really like the materials that you guys use, you're in luck, because this weekend you can take an extra 15% off anything on the Rig Doctor website. You're going to use the promo code 15OFF, all caps. You can visit our tone shop. We have all of our patch cables here. You can select from the drop down what length you want. We have increments of 6 inches all the way, well, I guess the first increment's not 6 inches. But after 9 inches, or after 12 inches, it's all, well, I guess it's not even 6 inches, in 3-inch increments. And you can choose what you want. You can choose what form factor of the plug, if you want a right angle, if you want a straight. We have all that stuff available in the tone shop. You get 15% off, and then we have Velcro, which we're using the Power Grip, which is an excellent Velcro. We have our instrument cables, tie-down mount, zip ties, and we even offer private tone consulting, which you can get 15% off. You can get one of our tone specialists, one of the rig nurses, or you can select me, the Rig Doctor, if you want. We offer all this stuff on the site. And actually, we even offer, and I don't see it on here, so we're going to have to update this, but we also offer a free version if you can't afford any of the paid versions. We don't want there to be any block between you and great tone. So if for any reason you can't afford some of these services, we offer our basic level for free. Just send us an email, no questions asked, no means testing required. You can get a free account, which allows you to go to our private live stream, which we actually do right after this live stream. So we usually go 45 minutes here, and then we'll do a private live stream to follow that's exclusive to our membership basis. So just a heads up on that. Let's go to some of the other questions that came in. I got another good one here that came in earlier. Oh, this is a good one. All right, Peter, he says, I have an MXR Phase 90 pedal that has a volume drop in the effects loop. What could I do to fix this issue It works fine in front of the amp, except for the weird mid crunch that happens when engaging the pedal. Well, some of these older pedals suffer from this issue where the input impedance is not really optimized for guitar. Things like the Memory Man, the Deluxe Memory Man, have a similar issue. A lot of those older electro harmonics, like the Electric Mistress, they're not designed for a guitar pickup, a standard passive guitar pickup. So sometimes they can have some issues there and can create some weirdness. Sometimes they distort too easily because of that. But I think to answer your question about what's happened in the effects loop is, an effects loop is not an effects loop is not an effects loop. There is no standard in our industry, unfortunately, for what constitutes a high-quality effects loop. A lot of them are passive, some of them are buffered, and few of them are buffered well. These input and output impedances that we talk about should really be roughly in that same range when you're dealing with the effects loop as well. And ideally, you should be able to have control of the send level and the return as well. So then this way you can attenuate the signal if you need to in order to make the pedal compatible with line level or instrument level, and be able to make up any of that gain on the return if you have to attenuate it a bunch so it doesn't clip your pedals. I would presume that there is some issue impedance-wise, or you have a passive loop of some kind that is not compatible with the input impedance of your Phase 90. So a really cool product that you can get. We actually started selling them on our website because we like them so much. And when I say our website, I'm meaning the RigDR website. But we did a video called Dumble's Biggest Mistake, and it was a little bit clickbaity. So I apologize to anybody who watched that and thought that we were trash talking Dumble. We weren't, but we were talking about the conditions of the time, and Dumble really didn't presume that people would be using so many effects in the effects loop. And so he created this device called a Dumbleator, and this basically took a passive effects loop and turned it into an active one. So you could have these controls in the send and return volume. Well, they were pretty big. They were rack-based. It wasn't really that hip or easy to use. So there have been some people recently that came out with a really cool one. And so this is one that I think is really great, and I talk about it in the video, and it's called the Clinulator. And this is essentially something that hooks up to your effects loop. So the input and output hook up to the send and return of your effects loop. And then the send and return become your new send and return, which go to your effects in the loop. And you have a send volume, and you have a return volume, and then a recovery, which is kind of like a voicing of kind of what's going on there. And you have a couple of different bright switches, so you can really dial it in transparently. And for what the cost is, for $180, it's pretty unbeatable for what it does. Because if you were to pay somebody to go inside and put a active loop into your effects loop, it would be much more expensive than that, probably $200 in just the labor to do that, plus whatever the materials were. So I think that this is a really good solution. We have it on our site as something that we sell, but you can also buy it from several different companies online. So go and shop around, see which one has the best price delivered to you based on where you are. I would say definitely worth checking that thing out. Just a heads up, 2.5 more minutes until our next giveaway. Let's see. All right, next question. Boss ES8 with a wet, dry, wet rig. Is it possible? I'm going to take a sip of my cold brew here before I answer that. So it's difficult. And here's the real problem, is that you can't, you doesn't have the ability to be able to mix several different effects in parallel. And that's the real drawback. And I know that there's a lot of different methodology, or there's become different methodology on what wet, dry, wet is. But in the original incarnation that was established back in the 80s, which is the standard in my view, is that you are running effects, you're running all your wet effects out of a line out box. So you have your dry amp is where all your distortion effects come into, and that goes in front of the preamp. So this is your compressors, this is your overdrives, your distortions, things of that nature. And then you take a line out box, which is basically, tapping off your output transformer, patting that down to line level, and then you have a volume control typically on these. and that sends into all of your wet effects. Maybe it'll go to some of the other line effects in series. Sometimes people would put graphic EQs or choruses, and the chorus would be the stereo split into the first stereo mixer that would have, you know, reverbs and pitch shift or micro pitch from the H3000, and then that mixer would then feed another mixer that had stereo delays, a 2290 or two 2290s, because they're not really stereo delays, or some of the PCM lexicon style stuff. So that's hard to do. Basically, the closest that you can approximate to it is to treat it as like a 4-cable method type thing, which I think requires that you sacrifice a loop in the ES8. And the send, essentially, you know, that goes in front of the amp, you know, like you would use the send of one of the loops or the volume loop to go to the front of the amp. And then the send from the amplifier effects loop, or in this case, the line out box, would come into the return. The problem is then you don't have a mixer. So you can't really do it unless you're going into a single device that already has its own internal parallel mixer. The only one that I can think of that does that well, or that can do that, is either the Helix stuff, like the HX Effects or HX Stomp, or an easy one that I like to use a lot for this application is the Source Audio Collider, which has a reverb and delay in it, and you can run those in parallel and 100% wet, and they're kill dry, analog dry through, all the things that you want to have to do it. So I guess it's possible, it's just not that easy, and you're going to be restricted to the type of effects that you could actually use to do it in the original way that it was intended. But we are at 0 seconds, so we're going to give away another item. This time, I have 30 feet of George L cable. This is unterminated George L bulk cable, but you can solder it yourself. I have a couple of George L instrument cables. So we're going to be giving away this George L cable. So again, the way that it works is I'm going to pose a question. You're going to answer the question in the chat. Mejia is going to announce the winner. The winner is going to email Mejia. He's going to put his email in the chat so you know exactly how to contact him. So the winner of this is going to win 30 feet of George L cable. I will ship it to you where you live. No questions asked. All right, so here's the question. Question number 3. Give one example of a pedal that should be placed before your input buffer. What is an example of a pedal that should be placed before your input buffer? So in other words, a pedal that should not be seeing a buffer. What's an example of a pedal that would fit that description? Put that answer in the comments. First person to answer it correctly will win 30 feet of George L cable. And we have Jonathan Holt as our winner. Thank you, Mejia. So Jonathan Holt, email Mejia. He will get you taken care of. We will get this shipped out. I think I can maybe even get it out for you this afternoon, so it could be there maybe as soon as Monday or Tuesday of next week. You can have 30 feet of bulk George L cable. Wonderful. Good work. We're going to start the clock again. We're going to give away another item in 8 minutes. So stay tuned. Lots of opportunities to win today. I'm going to hit another question from IG. All right. Let's see. Smurf 2311. What's the minimum power requirement to have to power up your pedals? Well, it's very pedal dependent. So not every pedal is going to have the same power requirements. Generally, we're at mostly 9 volts these days. And one thing that I'll say about this question, because we do get some similar questions around this, is if your output, let's say, I'm trying to see if I have a power supply handy that I can reference. I don't have one handy that I can reference. Let's say your power supply has 500 milliamp output for each output, like a Strymon Zuma. And I think some people get confused about the current versus the voltage. And so they say, well, my pedal only takes 20 milliamps or only draws 20 milliamps. I can't put 500 into it. That would kill it. And that's incorrect. The current, you can have more current than what the pedal draws. The pedal's only going to draw what it needs. You just can't have more voltage. So you can't say, well, I only have a 24 volt output, so I'm just going to run my 9 volt at 24 volt. You can't do that. Voltage, you want to make sure that you're within the acceptable range of what the pedal can handle. But current, as long as there's more available current than what the pedal actually draws, you'll have no problem. You just couldn't go lower. So, for example, if your pedal drew 500 milliamps, you couldn't run it at 9 volts at 250 milliamps. There wouldn't be enough current there to power the pedal. But you could always exceed the current amount. You just couldn't go under. So I think I hope that's what Smurf 2311 meant. So this is a good question. This is getting back to our boost question, whatever I did with the boost. Oh, here it is. So his question is I have the Boost MK1. So he's got this guy. He's got the Boost MK1. Space isn't an issue. Do I need the MK2? The answer is no, you don't. There's not, if you're using it and you're using it with the volume pedal, or you're just using it as a straight ahead boost and space isn't an issue, there's no benefit for you to go to MK2. But I can't tell you how many hundreds of emails I got that said, I love this pedal, I wish it were smaller. And, now that we have a little bit better concept, when this pedal first came out, like this, we designed this probably in 2012, and I think it came out in 2014, and people were using prototypes of this for several years before it ever came out. A lot of the studio guys in LA and Nashville. By the time it came out, there wasn't any real concerted effort for like the mini pedal craze. Like that just hadn't happened yet, or it was, if it was happening, it was kind of a fringe thing. It wasn't the standard. And so we really didn't have any thought of like, yeah, let's get it as small as possible. We kind of, basically my thought in making this size pedal was, how do I make it the same amount of surface area as a Phase 90 or a Dynacomp size box, the 1590B size, but have top jacks? So this is just as wide. Some people are deceived by this. Let me see if I have a 1590. Here's the Dynacomp. So here's a Dynacomp. And if I were to put jacks on this Dynacomp, it would be actually wider. Let me line them up. It'd be wider than my actual boost. And for the ones that have a jack on the back as well for their power, they end up actually being deeper than this. So it's sort of a little bit of an optical illusion. I'm not 100% on board with the mini pedal craze. I mean, this is definitely smaller, but I wouldn't say that it's not teeny tiny like some of these, because we can't redesign the foot, and for people that are practitioners in building boards, we can only make our feet so small, like unless foot binding comes back into fashion, we can get these pedals really close together, but there's only the ergonomics of the foot sort of dictate a minimum. So, having built boards have a bunch of these little tiny pedals on them, obviously the jacks take up more space. So this is actually narrower than an EP booster, for example. Once you put the jacks in the EP booster, it's wider than this, and the EP booster has a jack on the back, which makes it the same depth as this guy. So it's not really a gain at the end of the day. So even though this is slightly bigger than an EP booster, it actually ends up being the same size as it on a board because of the top jacks, because it doesn't have multiple different surfaces that require jacks. It doesn't require a jack on the left and right. It only requires it on the back. So these are just things to consider. Sometimes this optical illusion plays games on us. But who's playing that Strat? I'm presuming, Leland, you meant in the intro music that we had. I think that was Dan Huff, the incomparable Dan Huff. Do you have any experience with the Sweetfoot power supplies? I've never heard of them. I've never heard of the Sweetfoot power supplies. I'll have to check them out. Vince asks, is it possible to build a passive junction box that does what the Mission Expressionator does? No. That's basically like an expression toggle. Not passively. It would be hard to know what was on, because you'd have to have LEDs to indicate which was what. No, I don't think that there's an easy way to build a passive version of it. It's possible, but it would be hard to know where you were if you didn't have any LEDs to indicate which expression or which pedal's expression jack was being activated. And hopefully this chat isn't limited to an hour. It is limited. It is limited to that, and then we're going to go to our private chat, and this was to create some space for people that are doing the paying memberships. This is part of that. Again, on the rigdr.com, we have paid membership versions. Some of those are like group chats and weekly live streams, and then some of them are doing one-on-one. If you pay for the one-on-one, you get like everything. You get the private live streams. You get your own individual chats once a month. So yes, this is me going for an hour, and then we'll go over to the private chat after that. That is how we're structuring it for now. And if the feedback is negative and people don't like that, we'll try to figure out a workaround. Again, the idea here is to make it as enriching as possible. And I'm sorry we had a super chat that I totally blew off. So I'm trying to find it now so that we can get into it. But, well, wherever it went. Well, Mejia, even I think the super chat may have expired, but Mejia, if you can throw whatever that super chat was in there, I'll answer it anyway. But because we want to make sure that we get that. Marvin Music says, I never pay. If you guys don't know Marvin Music, it's like Marvin with a B. Absolutely incredible. Danny Rabin is the coolest dude in town, and definitely, man, just such good music. So much tone in those hands. Anyway, yeah, Mahi, if you can throw whatever that question was that had come in as a super chat, I'll answer it just so we can make sure that we got to that individual, because I feel terrible that we didn't get a chance to answer. Okay, it's showing up as Vertex, but this is what was in the super chat. So it says, I'm currently in the market to buy a Klon style pedal or blues breaker, and I dig the whole transparent style. Does Vertex offer anything like this? If not, what pedals would you recommend for a Klon or blues breaker? So I don't make any Klon style pedal, and I don't make any blues breaker style pedal, so I'm not the guy. But I will say this. I will say that of the Klon varieties, and I got one back here. I think that the J Rocket Archer to me is the closest that I've found, or indistinguishable enough where I can't tell the difference. I don't think that there's really any magic to the magical diodes that people talk about in the Klons between the silver and the gold. I think any attribution that you can make to that is due to leakages. It's not anything that it's so much of that is mysticism. I have a gold one, but the only reason why I have a gold one is that Chris Van Tassel, one of the owners of Rocket, is a friend of mine. He wanted a pedal, and we just traded, and that's what I got. But I really do like it. I think it sounds great, and it's small, fits on my board easily. For the blues breaker style, I also have an original blues breaker. And it's available everywhere, but I think that the Morning Glory is really cool. And what I like about it is that this pedal, like, you have to like really dime everything to like get it to react, and you don't have to do that on the JHS because it has that boosted function. It just works so much better for me. And I'm sorry. We're going to cut that off. I think you got a good answer. I think you got Morning Glory, you got Rocket Archer. Both of those are great. We got to do another giveaway. I have Canary GS6, 30 feet of patch cable here. We're going to do... somebody asked about the Boss Centaur. Yeah, I saw that meme floating around. That was pretty cool. I sent it to a few people. So anyway, we're going to give away the Canary cable. I'm sorry, I was paying attention to the Centaur. I'll see if I can dig it up because it's pretty funny. We're going to give that away. So again, the way the rules work is I'm going to put up a question. If you answer this question correctly, you're going to win this cable. We will ship it to you no matter where you are in the world. Doesn't matter where. We will get it to you. So let's get this one going. Next question. You're going to put it into the chat. Mejia is going to identify the person that answers the question correctly first, and we'll go from there. All right, so question number 4 is, in a rig that uses the 4-cable method, so 4-cable method is when you're using an amplifier with an effects loop, because you got 1 cable for the guitar, 1 into the input, 1 for send, 1 for return. You have 4 total cables. I just did it the European way, 4 total cables. How many buffers do you need ideally? How many buffers do you need? The person that answers this correct first is going to be the winner of 30 feet of Canary cable. And we already got a winner, Thomas Hannon, winner of the Canary cable. This is actually a really great cable. Even though it didn't do great in terms of the distribution on our cable shootout, man, does it? I think it sounds really good. If you ever get together with Dumble, I'll tell you this: Dumble uses Canary cables for everything. So just one other perspective. But in any case, so what is the right answer? The answer is that you should have 3 ideally. So you should have an input, right? So guitar plugs in, you get the first buffer. You should have one on the output that goes in front of the amp, so that's 2. Now, there could be a case that you could make for 4, but we're going to presume here that you have at least a buffered send. So you don't need a buffer there or to make it an active effects loop. You need a buffer, though, on the return, because we don't know what that last pedal is. That last pedal could be one of these guys, right? That last pedal could be one of these guys. It could be a Boss DM2 or a Boss DD6. This has a 1K output impedance. Not going to be glorious for the tone. If you got a 1K, that's 10 times higher than what I would ordinarily recommend. You would definitely want to have a low output impedance, bringing that long cable back to the return of the effects loop. So you should make sure that you are using the right stuff. And Jason, I am using a cloud lifter. Is it not loud enough? Sorry, I'm getting some dry mouth here from talking too much. Okay, I'm good. Yeah, if it's not loud enough, I mean, I can crank up the gain. I just didn't want to blow people out. It looks like on my sound level thing here, I'm kind of like right below clipping, like maybe around minus, I think right around -9, -12 is usually kind of the where this seems to clip. But anyway, we'll do another giveaway. We have the final giveaway, which is going to be for a Vertex Boost MK1, because I do have a lot of these. Well, not a lot. I have some that are left over because we're trying to clear out the warehouse because we have to make room for the MK2s. So I'll be giving away a free Vertex Boost MK1, fully functional, ready to go. Looks beautiful. Beautiful one. Brand new. So we'll get that shipped out to somebody too. We're going to do our last question in 8 minutes. So hang on, and we'll answer. We'll get to some more questions. I'm going to go back to another one that came in on the gram. And sorry, Jason, we're going to cut you off here. All right. So what is the real benefit for having a rig professionally built versus doing it yourself? I think that this is a good question. And we talk about this quite a bit. Sorry, I lost my camera feed. Let me see if I can fix this. There we go. We're looking good. So what's the real benefit? Well, first thing I should say is that I don't build rigs for hire. So there's no place on our website where you can have me build your rig. It doesn't exist because I don't offer the service. The stuff that I do is really just about creating content so that people can actually be empowered to build the rigs themselves. We can sort of democratize the information. And maybe I'm not the best teacher. I do the best that I can. And maybe there's some guys out there that would be better to teach this stuff, but as far as I know, nobody else is doing it. So this is part of the reason why this channel exists. And obviously we push our pedals periodically, but I really try to kind of live by like a 3 for you and 1 for me type mentality. Maybe we don't always line up on that perfectly in terms of 3 videos that have nothing to do with our products, and then maybe every 4th one or so will, be a product release like a Vertex Boost or something that involves our pedals. But as much as I can, I want to make it enriching for people who are watching it that feel like they left with something that they didn't know before they watched the video. Now, is there any benefit? Well, I think if you're observing the things that we talk about, like the holy trinity of tone, like high quality soldered cables, switch mode isolated power supplies, high quality buffers on the input and output, if you're doing that stuff and it doesn't look perfect, there's probably not going to be a whole lot of difference between whether I did it or whether you did it. It may not look as good, but that's not really going to matter in terms of a function. And even we talk about this in our pedalboard diagram or pedalboard wiring video, not movie, in our pedalboard wiring motion picture. There really isn't going to be a difference sonically, if you're crossing wires or things like that. As long as it's not AC, it doesn't really need to look perfect in terms of making it reliable or sounding better. It really isn't going to matter. As long as you're kind of observing those things. And so there are just a few distinctions I would say that are going to be the real differences. If you're observing all the best practices, maybe it doesn't look really neat. I'd say the big things that I'd say the differences are you able to troubleshoot if you run into a problem? Those can be things that are going to be difficult, that a pro guy might have some more experience on how to set things up so that they're not likely to fail in the field because they've just experienced that stuff and they know if they leave extra slack here, or they know if they route something a certain way or they dress a cable a certain way, it might mitigate some downstream consequences of having this thing out there. The other thing I would say is sometimes it can be easier to troubleshoot because the organization will be such where it's really easy to find where every connection goes. Everything's really labeled well. The power supply is labeled so you know which outputs correspond to which effects. It can be a little bit easier to be able to ID problems when it's done in a professional context. That's not to say that you couldn't do the same thing. Again, I try to give away all my secrets as much as possible. And if you're observing those best practices, there probably isn't going to be a whole different, there's not going to be a whole lot of difference in terms of how it actually sounds in the end. I would say that in some of the more complicated rigs, some of the wet dry stuff, if you're using multiple amps where you have a possibility of having a lot of ground loops, those can be areas where having a pro do it can really sort of differentiate the difference between a regular guy and a professional guy doing it. They would know kind of where some of those issues are. They would be able to help, or they'd be able to ID some of those issues before they ever got set up. But I would say for most people's rigs, mono rigs, there probably isn't going to be a tremendous amount of difference if you're observing those best practices. And now there's companies everywhere, including us, where you can get all your cables pre-made for you, already soldered with lifetime warranties. Makes it really easy to be able to ensure that that's not a failure point. High quality power supplies, that are quiet, that removes a noise component. And there's high quality buffers that are out there that are made by a bunch of people, and we also show how to DIY your own buffer for pretty much any setup you could think of. So I think that there are a lot of things you could do yourself, and if your rig is not too complicated, I definitely think it's something you could take on. I'm hoping that that's what people do after watching our videos, is that they feel like they are equipped with that knowledge, they can do it. Yeah. All right. 2 more minutes until our final giveaway. I'm just trying to scroll through here really quick to see if there's any really cool questions that we really want to get out there. Here's the cool one that actually I get asked a lot. Austin asks, what do you think of the buffers in the Strymon pedals? I think as far as pedals are concerned, they're among the better ones that are out there. They do have a 100 ohm output impedance, and I'd say that they're fairly transparent. I think as far as pedals go, that's probably on the best of what you're going to get. I mean, the Boost, of course, has an excellent buffer. It's the same buffer that I would use in a rig that we were building custom is in this thing, and there's an input and an output buffer on this. But if I weren't using my pedals or my pedals didn't exist, I think that Strymon's actually pretty good. I think the only reason why I might put a buffer after a Strymon effect is if it's in stereo and we need to have isolation, then I'll just bypass that buffer. I'll use a buffer that I know is going to be a little bit more optimized for the fact that there's going to be a transformer, and making sure that it's sort of, we've built a Zobel or a servo around that transformer. We have the right impedance that's hitting it, and I know that it's going to be a predictable outcome on the other side of that transformer. So those are the only conditions that I would say to supersede it. But if you're just running mono or something like that, you don't need the isolation. I think that it's a decent buffer and certainly one of the best amongst pedals out there. So that's a shout out for Strymon. Let's see. Please do a collaboration with That Pedal Show. Dan and I have texted about this. I don't know where Mick stands on it, but I know that Dan had talked about what that might look like. I think obviously they're in a harsher lockdown condition right now than we are in California, which is surprising because it's still pretty locked down generally, or at least in the county that I live. But perhaps when things resume to some sort of normalcy, that'll be a possibility. I would say the best way to ensure that happens, if that's something that you really want to see, is convince them, because I go to Andertons, or ordinarily I would go to Andertons to shoot product videos and stuff like that, and I had done that in the past. And if you're already that far away from home, it wouldn't be that hard to drive the extra however many hours it is between where Andertons is, which is just a little outside of London, and then make your way to wherever it is that they are, because I think that they're a few hours away from that or something like that. I don't know the exact geography of where they exist, but certainly something that I'm open to, and I think there could be some good opportunities to talk to both of our audiences and maybe Norm on some stuff. Let's see. Oh, and we're out of time. So we're going to do our last giveaway. I'm going to maybe take a few more questions, and then we're going to go to our private stream for our membership group. So this last giveaway, it's going to be the hardest question, but you're going to win a free pedal. Also, one thing I'll say, some people, when they shake our pedals, they hear this noise inside and they think that it's a component. It's not. It's the battery clip with no battery in it. So if you ever shake one of our pedals and you hear that sound, that's just our battery lead. And we use a really heavy duty one, so it's a little heavier. So you actually hear it bouncing against the inside of the enclosure. It's not just kind of like some wimpy little thing that's going to fall apart after a few years. All right, so this is the question. I'm going to ask the question. It's going to appear on the screen. I'm going to recite the question. If you answer this question correctly, you're going to win this pedal. I'm going to ship it to you wherever you live. You're going to get it shipped for free. I'm going to ship it to you, no questions asked. First person to answer correctly in the chat, Mejia is going to announce the winner as you're going to email Mejia, and he's going to get your information, your address, that stuff. All right? So here's the question. So the question is, provide one example of a linear power supply and one example of a switch mode power supply. So we talked about this in a couple of our last videos. We talked about examples of linear versus switch mode. I am a proponent of using the switch mode supplies, the quality ones that we've talked about. And the reason being is that there isn't going to be any issues with where you put things, because a linear supply with a toroidal transformer, most of them aren't toroids, but you don't have any consequence of where you put a switch mode power supply. You can put it underneath your pedal board, doesn't matter. If you have a linear power supply, you got pedals on top of it, you're going to have a problem, because that transformer is going to be emanating. You have that magnetic field going through all your pedals. You don't want to have that. So we got a winner already. Mejia says it's After Joe. So After Joe, you won a free Vertex Boost MK1, and congratulations to you. And an example of a linear power supply. So these are kind of the old school toroidal transformer or semi-toroid. Would be like a Voodoo Lab Pedal Power 2 or a Pedal Power 4x4 or a Decibel 11. I'm trying to think of a T-Rex fuel tank. These are examples of linear power supplies. There's a transformer in it. That's where the kind of the core element of the power is coming from, is this toroid. As opposed to a switch mode, that would be stuff like the True Tone CS6, CS7, CS12. This would be something like the Strymon Zuma, the Chalk 7, the Chalks 8, the Chalks 4. Those are all examples of switch mode. In fact, the new Voodoo Lab is switch mode. The Pedal Power 3 is their first switch mode, or I guess the X4 was technically switch mode, but this is the first one where the mains are inside of the actual supply itself. So like the Pedal Power 3, Pedal Power 3 Plus, X4, X8, those are kind of the Voodoo Lab versions now of the switch mode. And they're kind of late to that technology, but they're also excellent. So this isn't a knock on Voodoo Lab. I think that they make some great stuff, and they were certainly pioneers and the first people to do it. Back in the 90s, there really wasn't any other easy way to do it in our industry than to use linear supplies. Switch mode was not a common thing that was used. In pro audio, it was used a little more, but it wasn't standard for us in guitar pedals until probably the last 5-ish years or so. So congratulations to that person. I'm going to take a couple of more questions, and then we're going to head to the private chat. And again, if you're unaware of what the private stream is, there are individuals that are joined on the rigdr.com. I'll just bring it up real quick so people know what the heck it is that I'm talking about. So if you head over to the rigdr.com, I'll bring it up here on the page. If you head over to the rigdr.com, we offer some group consulting and private consulting, and this is where people get to have a weekly live stream with us. There's a couple of different membership tiers that people can select from. It gives them some additional access, but even at the basic tier at $7 a month, you get some free discount and coupon codes on Vertex stuff, on Rig Doctor products, cables, accessories, Velcro, stuff like that. And you get to do a once-a-week live stream, which we do right after we complete this live stream. And again, if you can't afford it for any reason, or if you're affording it now and your financial situation changes, we offer the same account, the basic tier, for free. If you cannot afford it, just send us an email, info@vertexfx.com, and we offer that. No means testing required, no questions asked. Just say that you want to have a free account. We grant 100% of those. No problemo. We're happy to do it. We don't want money to be standing between you and Great Tone, so you can do that. But if you want to go and get private consulting, we also offer that as well. And so this is also available on the rigdr.com. But I also wanted to let people know that we do have 15% off everything in the store, including our consulting. So you can purchase Velcro, dual lock, zip ties, instrument cables, patch cables, all the stuff that we use in our rigs. It's all here. We get 15% off all weekend long, starting now through Sunday evening. So definitely check that out. And we can get you set up if you need any cables, you need any zip ties, Velcro, you need any tie-down mounts, all the stuff that we use, it's all there. So take a couple more questions, and then I'm going to head to our private stream for our Patreons. And, well, it's not really Patreons. They're sort of like Patreons, but they're on the rigdr.com. We did have a Patreon, but we're migrating that over. So we'll take a couple more. I'm trying to sort through all the great answers that were given here. Let's see. All right. Here's another one that came in from Instagram. Oh, no. We answered that one already. This one came in from the community chat. Okay. Do pedals that contain various types of buffers cause any issues when using a high-quality input and output buffer? Is the signal negatively affected by running through multiple buffers? So we actually just did a video on this yesterday, or I shot it yesterday, and you probably won't see it for a few weeks. But what we ended up doing is talking about where true bypass is appropriate and where the buffered pedals are appropriate. Basically, the conclusion is you want as much true bypass as you can get. But you want to have a high quality buffer first, is the first thing your guitar plugs into, loads your guitar pickups properly, converts the signal to a low output impedance, and one at the very end. So no matter what's going on the pedal board, all the impedance leapfrogging that's going on the pedal board is not going to be affected. You're going to make sure you have a low output impedance signal going back to the amplifier no matter what the pedals are doing. So this is sort of creating what I call a firewall, or a hardware firewall, that's isolating the impedance of the pedal board. So the guitar is isolated from the pedal board, and the pedal board is isolated from the amp in terms of the impedances. I think that that's the best way to do it. Now, if you have some buffered pedals on your pedal board, like a Klon or some Boss things, it's not the end of the world. I just think you need to be conscientious and aware that if you're using a lot of poor quality buffers, it can do two things. It can add noise to the system if you have a lot of them. And remember, when you talk about a Boss pedal buffer, generally there's not just one buffer in a Boss pedal. There are often multiple buffers in most of these BJT buffers in Boss and Ibanez and stuff like that. So it's not just like you're getting one. You can often get multiple buffers in there. It not only increases the noise, but it actually decreases the output. And there's a really interesting video that I watched Brian Wampler do a couple years ago, where he went onto Jack Orman's site, and Jack Orman has these tests that he did, where he ran 4 true bypass pedals in series, and he ran 4 buffered BJT style Boss pedals in series. And you can see on the true bypass one that, you know, that you might have gotten a little bit of loss in the high end, maybe a real slight change, just because each true bypass pedal is essentially just like increasing your cable length, because you have more cable in the interconnections, more capacitance in the interconnections, plus any of the capacitance that's in between the input jack, the switch, and the output jack. So there is some added capacitance there. But compared to the 4 BJTs in series, the BJT's noise floor went up, and it lost, I think, like 1.5 dB between the 4 buffers, because each one of those BJTs that you run through, it lowers the output of the total system. Most BJT buffers actually can't get totally back to unity gain, and that's kind of one of the downside consequences of using them. And so it's a really interesting kind of analysis of what this does. And so you just need to be aware of that. You just need to be aware that there is this consequence. Now, maybe having 1 or 2 is not going to be that big of a deal. But if you have a pedal board like Prince's, where there's like 25 Boss pedals in series, you can bet your bottom dollar that that thing did not sound as good as him plugging straight into his amplifier, even though he's a fantastic guitar player. So I think that this is something to be to consider. And I'm going to take one last question, and then we're going to move on to the private stream. And then we will do another live stream next week, open to the public. R.C. Anderson, do you plan to run a steel string MK2 giveaway in the near future? I'd love to enter. I'm too cash poor to purchase one. I don't have any on the docket, but Mejia is organizing a lot of this, so maybe you can appeal to Mejia. And just tell him, tell him the story. Tell Mejia, we need a MK2 giveaway. Nostro1001, can you give me some idea when the MK2 is due to land in Australia? Has Signal Chain ordered? Well, we actually have a distributor now in Australia called Hot Apple Distribution, and they distribute all over Australia, and from Perth all the way to Sydney. And they just put in an order, I think, for 160 units or something. So they should have them, I would say, and they're usually pretty fast about getting them over there. I would say they should have them within a week or so. So if I were you, I would message Aaron, is the main guy's name who kind of deals with the sales stuff. Email Aaron at Hot Apple Distribution, and I think that they're based in out of Brisbane, maybe. I think either Brisbane or Melbourne, I'm not sure. But and then you can either, I think, order one through them, or you could order one through Roger at Signal Chain, because it's just going to be a matter of time. Or Deluxe also carries them in Melbourne. I don't know what part of Australia that you're in, but definitely hit them up, because I know that you can reserve them, because we're almost sold out of these, and we won't have any more until May. So if you're not on the bus now, it's going to be a little while before you have the ability to be able to get one again. So guys, thank you so much for all your support, for being here today, for joining us. If you haven't already, hit us with a thumbs up. I know it seems insignificant, but it actually helps sort of kind of keep things going and make sure that people are seeing this, that want to see it. And leave us a comment. Tell us what you like that we talked about. If we missed one of your questions that you had put in the comment section, just throw that. Just copy paste it. Throw that in the comments. I try to answer as many as I can myself. If I can, time permitting, I will try to get to every single one of them. So I'm sorry if I didn't get to you here, but definitely throw it in the comments. I will get to it as soon as possible. For all of our members, we're going to throw the link up via email right now, so just hang in there and we'll get the private stream restarted. And if you want to join the private stream, head over to therigdr.com and you can sign up there or request a free account and be able to continue the conversation with us on the back end of this stream. So thank you, goodbye, have a great weekend, and we'll see you next week.